Welcome to another Dove Valley Deep Divers breakdowns. I am your host, Erick Trickel. You can catch me on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast every Friday night at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. No one's joining me today, unfortunately, due to technical issues and scheduling. I wasn't able to get somebody in here, but it doesn't mean we don't have a fun conversation that we can have. I mean, we just saw a very rainy game against the Denver Broncos and the New York Jets that the Denver Broncos managed to win, bringing their record to 2-2. And today, for this breakdown, we're going to be focusing on what the Broncos offense did against the New York Jets. And it obviously starts with the quarterback position. Now, with the rain, obviously, it's going to affect the passing offense. And when I went through and charted this through the throws yesterday, there were about 10 passes or so, give or take one or two, of Bo Nix, where the rain very clearly was affecting his pass, where he couldn't grip the ball well enough to get the pass out accurately, place it well enough, leading to an incompletion. And then on the flip side, for Aaron Rodgers, who has far more experience, mind you, in the NFL in these bad weather games, playing in Green Bay for as long as he did, he had only 5 of them. So he was able to adapt to the weather a little bit more, even though it was still an issue. And this is something that Bo Nix needs to work on, as it is inevitable that he will go and play another game in not ideal weather. So I'm not ripping Bo Nix here. We're not going to talk much about his passing game or the passing game in general. This is just something that he needs to work on and improve so that he's not as impacted going forward in these bad weather games. And he just was impacted more. That said, in the second half, when the rain eased up a little bit, Bo Nix was a little bit more precise. He made one of the best throws all season long on a deep dig route to Courtland Sutton, and then made another nice throw, which an even better catch by Courtland Sutton for his first passing touchdown. There was some promising takeaways from Bo Nix passing in this game when the rain eased up. And even in the first half, when the rain was so heavy, there were still some passes that were pretty good. He had a couple deeper shots where the ball just missed, was just a little bit too deep, which is a great sign. So just because it was bad weather doesn't mean you can shrug off everything the passing offense did and ignore it. There is still things that you can come and take away from this. And overall, it was a pretty promising outlook for Bo Nix. Another aspect of this, and it could be attributed to the rain and the field being wet, this was his worst game when it came to his footwork. He was planting off that back foot a little bit, which, hey, that's something that we needed to see. It was something that he wasn't doing in the first 2 weeks. Seemed to be a focal point for him against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where he had his best game so far in his 4-game career. And then it kind of took a step back a little bit. But more than that was just his steps, his dropbacks. There seemed to be a little bit more issues with that, and could be, and I do think this is the case. I'm not 100% sure here. Just being uncomfortable with how wet the field was and uncertain of keeping his footing. So he was playing it safe a little bit. And that also did have an effect on his placement, though not as much as the rain. So that's all we're going to be talking about, the passing game. The rain makes it a harder game to evaluate from that aspect because so much goes into it that the wet field, the wet ball impacts. The other aspect of this, of the passing game, I guess, moving on from Bo Nix, not the passing game in general, is the offensive line. The New York Jets have a really capable pass rush. They came into the week 4 of the season as one of the highest teams in their pressure percentage. They were getting pressures at an extraordinary rate. And the Denver Broncos were without Mike McGlinchey, who's on injured reserve for the second game so far of his at least 4 games. Alex Palczewski came in, and he had played admirably against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he had an even better game against the New York Jets. I think there were some more issues against the run than he had against the Buccaneers, but he was a little bit better in pass protection, as the New York Jets did try to take advantage of that, unlike the Buccaneers did. But overall, the offensive line, they did a great job. They only allowed 5 pressures on Bo Nix all game long. 5. That is a great result for this in a wet weather game. That footing and footwork and all that was kind of problematic across the board with a slippery field, but they held their own and they kept this pass rush at bay. Even though they couldn't capitalize it through the air, they held back. 5 pressures, that's 1 every 5 dropbacks. Bo Nix only had 25 passing attempts. So it was effective for it. But what's even more so is that this was the best game we got from this offensive line as a run blocking unit. This was probably but one of Garrett Bowles' best games in his career as a run blocker. Ben Powers showed his dominance as a run blocker. Quinn Miners showed his dominance as a run blocker. And Alex Palczewski had a decent enough game. Again, there were some issues on Alex Palczewski's game, but he was solid enough. He got the job done. Even Luke Wattenberg, who he had probably the toughest matchup, going against Quinnen Williams as often as he did, Luke Wattenberg probably had the toughest matchup of the bunch up front, and even he was doing well. Was it perfect? No, but it got the job done. And this led to what was the best running offense this Broncos team has shown all season without Tyler Beatty. Tyler Beatty, or Bidet, excuse me, still getting adjusted to how you're pronouncing his name, how he's changed the pronunciation of his name, anyways. Tyler Bidet going down with the back injury. Now, it seemed early on that he was going to be the focal point. Before he got hurt, there was like 5 carries, and I think he got 3 of them. I might be mistaken on that. It was 2 or 3 of the first 5. Jaleel McLaughlin got 1 or 2, and Javonte Williams got 1. So when Tyler Bidet got hurt, Jaleel McLaughlin and Javonte Williams needed to step up. Both of them have been really disappointing this season. And it wasn't just an issue with blocking. They were below the rush yards over expected. And rush yards over expected takes the play and it says, this is how many yards this player should be getting on this play using, all these advanced analytics and data points of movement and speed and all this stuff like that. And decides how many rush yards they should be picking up. They were both in the negative, meaning they weren't getting as many rush yards as the offensive line was opening up the lanes for. This game was different. In the case of Javonte Williams, he seemed less passive behind the line of scrimmage, less trying to, find that hole and go for the big gain instead of just following the design of the play, following his blockers, taking what they're giving and trusting them with opening the hole and not cutting back into the back of his blockers or into the teeth of the defense. And it worked. They'd used a little bit more pulling and with the run game this week, which helped him out as kind of a way of saying, hey, here's your run block landmark, trust it, follow it, and just go. So the issues with Javonte Williams, and I've been a big critic of his, he was struggling against light boxes. He was struggling against neutral boxes. He was struggling against stacked boxes, which that just accounts for how many defenders are in the box. So he was struggling no matter what. It seemed that there were multiple issues with him. The mental aspect didn't seem there. The vision seemed to be an issue. And then the lack of burst. Well, he looked like he had more bursts against the Jets. The mental block that seemed to be blocking him wasn't there. He was a little bit more willing to lower and really drive through potential tackles and make them pay for it. Whereas, especially against the Buccaneers, he seemed a little bit more passive. In one play, on the play that he fumbled in specifically, he had a wide open lane, and the design run was to go off of Garrett Bowles off the left tackle in the C gap. A safety comes down and fills that hole. And that was the only defender there. This could have been a huge run for Javonte Williams. All he had to do was go and try to break through the safety for the big play. Instead, he cuts it back, gets caught up on his blockers, on Ben Powers and Garrett Bowles, gets tripped up, and ends up fumbling. He picks up 5 yards, but it doesn't matter because he fumbled. So it was nice to see him be more aggressive with it and taking the easier shot. It was an easier opportunity for him on that play against the Buccaneers to target the safety and try to break through it instead of cutting back into the teeth of the defense and running into the backs of blockers, leading to a fumble. So we saw more of that against him. We saw more burst. And then the vision aspect, it's still an issue, but the Broncos run design, the type of runs that Sean Payton was calling, was leading to limiting the negative impact from his vision by making it the path and the run very clear to him. And Jaleel McLaughlin, he looked very explosive in this, and he seemed to be less impatient behind the line and just going, being like, here's the design of the run. I'm just going to hit that hole at full speed and just pick up whatever the defense is giving me. And it was effective and it worked. So that was great to see. And these are all things that the Broncos need to keep going forward. When they are using Javonte Williams as a runner, which they may still do. I mean, this was a great game, and you want to see him continue this going forward. And with Tyler Bidet out, the opportunity is there. So you want to see it going forward, and you take what you were doing against the New York Jets, who do have one of a very bad run defense as well, so that definitely played a part in it. But you want to take what was effective and continue with that going forward, and trying to keep getting replicating the results that you got from Javonte Williams, making sure he has that clear pathway of for the run ahead of him, make sure that he has everything like super clear, the mental aspect of it down, and that he just needs to go and trust the blockers instead of trying to do too much. Overall, with in factoring in the rain, this wasn't a terrible performance from the Broncos offense. They got things going on the running game, showing improvement in key areas that needed to be improved upon, and their passing game, which was impacted by the rain, of course, still had moments that make you say, "Okay, like there is something here." They just got to take that next step of making those connections. There were a couple shots deep, and it's been this case all season. There've been shots deep from Bo Nix, but he's just been a little bit too far ahead of the receiver. Just has to rein that in a little bit and work on the timing aspect of it. So that is a factor of it going forward. So overall, despite, you know, one of the worst offensive performances in the last 10 years, going into the halftime with what, -7 passing yards, there's still stuff you can take away from it and that you can build on. And it is, if they can go out and they manage to go out there and get the win. And I think that this can't be understated enough. When they needed a touchdown drive in the rain, granted it was lighter than in the first half, Bo Nix went out there, executed, and got the job done. Still a lot of growing to do from him. Still a lot of growing to do with this offense. That's a very young unit. But if they can find the consistency that they need, if they can just fix those slight errors with timing and placement on some of these deep shots or underneath throws to get the ball to these guys with timing, with in space, with proper placement, if the pass protection can hold up, if the run game can sit there and stay being as effective as they were, or even taking a step back with effectiveness, but still being, positive, being effective, this offense, I don't want to say can become a dangerous unit, but they can make this team a scary team because of how the defense is performing. Now, we're going to get around to breaking the Broncos defense against the Jets. That'll be in another video to come. But overall, there's a lot of negative thoughts to take away from this Broncos offense from this game, but most of them are derived from the rain and the impact the rain had. But there's still a lot of positives, and those positives are what you really have to hang on to with such a rainy game. Like, you went out there and you had these moments that were close or moments that were made in this rain. And for a young offense, a young rookie quarterback, those can be confidence building moments that translate and carry over the rest of the season and can carry you to more wins to come. This offense, they have a chance. They're getting close. They just got to take that final step. But that's going to do it for me today for breaking down the Broncos offense against the New York Jets. Stay tuned for breaking down the Broncos defense against the Jets. Again, we'll be talking a lot about the rain and the weather in that one. But the Broncos defense, spoiler, they played a phenomenal game. What you guys can do to help us out, make sure here on YouTube you leave a like, because that helps with the algorithm. Make sure you're subscribed, also helping with the algorithm. And most of all, leave a comment down below. If you have a question, a comment, or even a topic idea that you want me and Lance or some combination to sit there and talk about, make sure you leave it in the comment section down below, and we'll try to grab it and try to remember to grab it when we sit down and record these videos. We appreciate your guys' support. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Erick Trickel, and you can follow Mile High Huddle on Facebook at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle. You can get access to all of our written content there. On Twitter as well at Mile High Huddle. All of our written contents there as well. I have had an article go up about, talking about the trade deadline a little bit. Another article every week I do my player grades. Had another article talking about why this Jets win was as vital as it was. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, evening, morning, whatever happens to be at the time you guys are watching this. Next game, it's the Raiders. We got to end that win streak. Okay? We got to. See you guys next time. Stay safe.